What is up, guys? Today we're going to stop by the garage. We just got here. I think we're going to do a how-to video. How to change some clutch plates on a Suter clutch for, not that turd, the R6. So, if you've ever had to work on an R6 before, you know that getting this cover right here, the clutch cover, on and off is a bitch. So even if you don't have a Suter clutch, we will go through that today, getting it on and off, and what works for me, and yeah, some other stuff like clutch stacks and distances and heights and all that fancy stuff. So stay tuned. All right, let's go through the kit and see what we have. So I always use Yamaha OEM stuff for any of my bikes. If I can use OEM parts within reason, unless there's better stuff out there. When it comes to gaskets and plates and things like that, I always want to use OEM. I know it's going to work. It works great, and most people are going to recommend it as well. So when we open it up, we're going to have springs. This can be for a normal clutch, but I don't have, so if anybody wants these, hit me up. You can have them. They're brand new. As we keep going. That's it. Oh, wait, no, we got the gasket in here, I think. Yes. Gasket, so you can reuse these if you absolutely have to, like if you're at the track and you got to pull it apart, but I recommend always having extras because once they get bent and weird, it's a pain in the ass and you don't want to be leaking oil all over the place. So you're going to have a box stack that's going to look like this. This is your clutch stack. So if you've never done this before, you're going to have rings that look like this that are going to be metal, and then you're going to have more rings that look like this. These are going to be your clutch, the actual friction plates. So if it was done correctly, which it should be, not all of these metals are exactly the same. They should be a tiny bit, like a couple millimeters, I mean not a couple millimeters, like a couple, it's very small decimals of millimeters off. So we're going to use these metals to adjust the stack height of our clutch, and that's very important for the slipper clutch, the Suter. So we'll go through that when we get there. But for the time being, step one. So I just pulled these out of the box, and just to show you what I was talking about, these are all slightly different. Well, these three are the same, but a little bit different in part numbers. So what that is for is so the stack of your plates and friction plates together, you can adjust the size based on the tolerances of the clutch that you're using. And I'll explain that more. You'll see what I'm talking about when we get there. It's very important, especially if you have like a Suter or whoever else makes slipper clutches, but we'll get there. So step one is you're going to want to take all of these discs out of the plastic. So these are a porous material, right? So your clutch, unless you have a fancy Ducati, in which case this doesn't matter, it's soaked in oil the entire time. So you want to pre-soak these in oil. So what we're going to do in order to do that is you need a bucket. This is just a regular bucket underneath here, but I want it to be clean. So I'm just using a trash bag inside of it because I'm going to reuse that oil actually after we pull the oil out of the bike. So you're going to take your oil, pour it in the bucket. These were not full, so that's all right. We're going to take some plates, throw them in there. Take a little bit more oil, and you want these to be pretty much submerged. So, like I said in the beginning, the whole purpose of this is you want the discs themselves to soak up a little bit of oil. I'm not sure if it's just like one of those old myth things that you're supposed to do, kind of like the oil filter grease on the rubber or not, but I've always done it. I've always been told to do it. We're going to keep doing it because I've never had any problems for the most part. So put those in there. Some people say, shake, 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 let them soak for 24 hours, but we're not going to do that. We don't have time. It's not realistic. We're going to leave them in there probably, maybe an hour or two. You want to do this first. So that way, now that this is in there, we can take the fairings off. We can do all the other stuff while this sits, kind of kill two birds with one stone. Step two, get the bike up onto the stand. You want it to be level. If it's sitting on a kickstand outside, I guess you can do it. But it's just going to make it a little bit easier when you put the plates in that it's level and easy. You should only have to take off the side fairing and the belly pan if you're on race fairings. I have some other stuff to do at the same time, so I'm going to pull off this whole side. While we are here, quick shout out to a fellow significantly much faster racer than I am, Nolan Lampkin, for dropping me this tip, I think it was like last year or so. All of the bolts that I use on my bike are from McMaster Car. They're significantly cheaper than OEM stuff, but they're made in the USA. They're super strong. They're stainless. They're not just some Chinese crap. But what's the greatest thing about them, especially on the R6, is a lot of the bolts are the same size. Almost everything on my bike I can take off with a 4mm Allen key. This one here, and it's just super easy, especially like if you're building a race bike or a track bike. It's so much easier to take the least amount of tools as possible so you can get things done in between races as fast as possible. And this helps a ton because it's just one tool to take almost the entire bike apart instead of having to switch between different sizes and whatnot. So shout out to Nolan. Okay, so we are at the point that we want to be at for the most part. This is where the fun starts to begin. So what we need to do now is we need to pull off our protective cover, which is easy, and then get off these bolts. So what I recommend you doing now, and this is super important, it's going to make your life a lot easier in the future, is take a photo of everything. I mark where whatever this thing is called, and I put a little mark so I know that they're in line. So when I take this clutch cable off and hook it all back together, and you'll see what I'm talking about when we put it back together, I want this all to be in line again, so that way I don't have to adjust my clutch cables and everything is where it's supposed to be. So mark this, you can mark it down here. Just do anything you can to make sure you know exactly where it's supposed to go back. If you can't get it, it's not the end of the world. You can adjust the cable, but it's just unnecessary and I don't want to do it. It's a pain in the ass. So let's start taking this off. All right, so I got everything loose. This case cover won't come off until we loosen up one of these bolts because the clutch cable's in the way, which is fine. I just want to note that when you pull this clutch cable off, you might get a couple drops of oil that might spill out, which is fine. The bike is full of oil. I'm not draining the oil out. You can do this with the oil in it. It's not a big deal. Just know you might, get a couple pieces of oil out. So we're gonna loosen up this bolt. Should be a 12 mil, I believe. Yes. So we'll loosen up this guy. Not going crazy. Just a couple turns, enough to get it out of this. And from here, I probably can't get the camera in to see, but if you look at it, I'll pull it out after, and you can see this comes right out. So the way that happens, I'll show you when we get this out. So now this comes off. Knock over your beer. I'm gonna loosen up all the rest of these bolts. Oh, she coming. All right, that should be the last of them. And this guy should pull right off. Just get it around these cables. And there's our fancy Suter. So this is why you don't really want to reuse these if you don't have to. As you can see, it's kind of mangled and bent up just from existing, and I've taken this on and off a couple times at the track to do, some emergency maintenance stuff. If you have new ones, just use them. I order a bunch in bulk, so I always have some of my spare parts bin. It just becomes really hard to get this on and off and sitting even. You start putting it on and it starts getting folded and it's a pain in the ass, so get some extra. When you take this out, you'll see these pins. I like to keep them in here. If you look at the clutch cover, there's one here and one here, but what happens sometimes is it stays in the bike. You can see here, I like to take them out of there and keep them in the clutch cover just so I know where they are, and I put them in there. They help later. So the reason that this is such a bitch to get on and off is because this guy needs to line up perfectly with this guy, but there is really no way to stop this from dropping, or just like you have to get it perfect to go in. I can't say I have like the magic secret, but I can show you the way that I do it that makes it easier once we get there. But in the meantime, we're gonna pull apart this Suter and see where we're at. So before we go any further, I feel like I should have explained this from the beginning. What is a Suter? What is a slipper clutch? So Suter is the brand. It is a slipper clutch. I'm not going to pretend that I know exactly how it works because I don't, but I will tell you what it does. So when you're coming into a corner hard on the brakes, for example, you come into a corner, you're hard on the brakes, you bang out 2, 3, 4 downshifts, whatever it is. When the speeds of the motor and the rear tire and your actual speed don't match, the rear tends to lock up a little bit and skip, and it'll, move around a little bit. That's how backing it in is done. They're hard on the brakes, they bang out multiple downshifts, and the rear is not going as fast or it's going faster, and it slides until it matches traction again. What the Suter does is it minimizes that lockup. I don't know the physics of how it works. Someone could go in the comments and explain it. I know there's things that load and unlock and springs. I have no idea. Just know what it does. So what it'll allow the wheel to do is when you hit those downshifts where it would normally lock up, the rear wheel will free spin. So almost kind of like you're in neutral, kinda. That prevents the rear wheel from sliding and hopping around, which enables you to just keep taking that corner because the rear wheel is just staying on the ground instead of sliding. So you can bang multiple downshifts coming into a corner, braking hard, and the rear, for the most part, stays pretty planted. You can still make it slide if you want to. So what's cool with the Suter is it comes at multiple different spring weights, so you can adjust pretty much the engine braking of the bike and how much you want that wheel to free spin. So you can make it so it just spins all the way for a long time, or you can make the spring a little bit heavier where it'll still have a little bit of slide if you want, or some skipping if you want. So it's very, very cool. Solid investment if you're having a race bike or a track bike that doesn't already have like a good slipper clutch. Yes, this is technically a slipper clutch that comes from the factory with the R6. There's mods you can do to it, but it's just a game changer. It's so much better. You can go from like 5th to 2nd or 1st gear, and the bike just stays planted the entire time. It's awesome. So to start working on this, first thing we got to do is pull out these bolts. I believe it is a 4mm. Yep, should not be in there very tight at all. And some things are a little fragile, so let's do it properly in a star pattern here. So this should pop right off. Yep, and the plates are going to come with it, but yeah, so that's it. So we're going to take this piece out for the time being. Just give this a quick inspection, make sure the bearing still works the way it's supposed to. Make sure nothing's, nothing's broken, nothing's chipped, nothing's cracked. Looks good. So we're going to put this somewhere clean for the time being. Notice while we're doing this, everything is soaked in oil. This bike has a wet clutch. And that is why we are pre-soaking the other plates so we can get these off. It can be a little tricky getting these out sometimes. You can't really get your fingers in there. If you have like a pick or something, it helps. Oh, we actually got pretty lucky. They're all stuck together here. Cool. And that's it. That's how you get the plates out, and then we'll go over to our table and we'll go through measurements and all that good stuff. All right, so we got the original stack here, and we're gonna do a little bit of prep work just to make life easier as we do this and possibly in the future. So what I like to do is, these are new plates. I like to take these, because like I said before, this is a different part number, then these are a different part number. So I wanna make sure and see what our thickness for everything is, because then we're adjusting the stack. If I need to go bigger or smaller, I know which ones I need to grab. So I like to take some measurements with my calipers that I got off Amazon here, which are actually pretty solid, and see where we're at, see what these ones are, and then I'll label them. So this one says 2.31 millimeters. So we'll call that 2.3. Let's take a little Sharpie, 2.3. So that way I know. And then, like, for example, I'm sure if I grab one of these will probably be a little bit skinnier. So we'll make sure we're zeroed. We are. This is 2.0. So this one's a little bit skinnier. So I know, all right, 2.0 on these. It's not going to last forever, but it helps for when you're putting the clutch together. So I'll do that with all of those real quick, and then we'll go back to this stack and see how it all works. All right, so we're just finishing up on the last plate here. There's another 2.0. So as you can see on the table, these are all 2.0. These are, I got two 2.3s and then one 1.6. And these are all brand new, so I got 3 different sizes. It seems like the bulk of it's going to be the 2.0s. So cool. It's awesome that Yamaha does that instead of you having to order different plates and whatnot to make it a pain in the ass. It's cool that they do that, and you just get everything you need for the most part. If you look at these plates, you can see this kind of has like a rounded corner, and this end is a little bit different. than this end. So you want this end facing out towards you, and this is going to go inside. So just take note of that. And then if we look at our old discs, you'll see we're starting with the last one's a plate, top one's a plate, and then we'll take a count of exactly how many we have just to be sure. And yeah, if we look at these are, I mean, they're still usable, but you can tell just the difference in color that these are a little burnt up a bit, and not the end of the world, still usable, I guess, but we got new ones, so we're gonna use them. What I end up doing most of the time is I'll keep this whole stack and I'll put it in like a heavy duty Ziploc bag soaked in oil, because I know it does work if needed. So if something happens at the track, or even if I just need, you know, a steel that maybe is a little bit different in these measurements, because these will have a little bit of wear, I'll just have an extra one with me, so that way, you know, if it's my bike or one of the boys' bikes or something breaks, like, it's not brand new, but it will work. So I'll just try and keep that together the best that I can, and I'll use all the brand new stuff. All right, so first things first, we got to see what our old stack height is at. So these are the instructions that came with my Suter. Look at yours, because not everyone is exactly the same. So it's going to ask you for the ramp angle, and it'll tell you right here what yours is. Mine is 35 degrees. It comes in multiple different options. There's a 30, 32.5, 35, 37.5, 40. I don't know what the difference is. This is just the one that they gave me for my bike. So mine's a 35. So if we look here in our instructions, it's on, what side is it on? All right, here. If we look here, it's going to tell me the distance of the stack height, which I already wrote down because we can't see that very well. It's 42.5 is where we want to be. Tolerance, it allows us a 0.2 or we can go below 0.6 based on this 42.5. So I'm pretty sure when I made this last time, I was at exactly 42.5, which makes it pretty easy to do the math and whatnot. So let's see where we're at. So when you do this, you want to measure the widest part of the stack. So get the friction material in there as well. And you're going to want to take a couple measurements at different sides. So open these bad boys up, get it on so it's nice and flat, and I'm at, let's see, 42.8, which somehow is too big. So maybe I messed it up last time. 42.8, 42.7. Okay, so yeah, we're actually too big. So if we're at 42.5, it allows us a 0.2, which puts us at exactly 42.7, but we're at 42.78. These are actually better calibers than the ones I used to use, so yeah, maybe I was off the first time, which is why it explains why the bike is acting a little odd. 42.79. So yeah, pretty consistent 42.79. I wasn't expecting that. 42.9, yes, that's way too big. 2.8, and we're not squeezing these super hard, we're just, you know, getting a measurement here. So it seems to be consensus is about 42.8. We're gonna close these, zero them again, just take another measurement just in case. Yep, 42.76. 42.79. 43. So yeah, about, you know, the consensus is 42.8, we'll call, is what our measurement is. So we're off. In theory, if we're at the track, we can just start swapping around plates to make this skinnier. We got brand new ones, we might as well put it in, but it's good to know that this is plenty thick that we can still use it. And I'll measure this again, and I'll try and get it as close to what the new stack is going to be. So if we're at the track, we can just swap them. All right, so I found a 1.6 plate out of the old stack, and let's measure and see where we're at now. It's 42.5, so that's pretty much perfect. Measurements to make sure we're good. 42.5. I don't know if you guys can see that. Bam, spot on. 42.53. 42.47. So we're going to say 42.5, which is perfect because that's dead on of our measurements that we want. So we want 42.5. We have a tolerance of plus 0.2, minus 0.6, but we're dead in the center, so we're going to call this perfect. So let's go put this back on the bike. Make sure we put these plates on in the same way that was started. Here, I'll make it a little bit more flat for you guys. So plate goes on first, then a steel, then a plate, and so on, so on. You want to make sure that all of your little tabs on here are lined up in the same direction up until the last plate. When you're putting your steels in, make sure they're facing the same direction. So you want that grindy, little finished looking side on the inside. So since we numbered them, we should just be able to see our numbers. And you're gonna put the whole stack in here. So we measured it, we know exactly what it is. These guys line up, there we go. The steels are universal. By that I mean they don't have to be sitting in a certain left or right direction as long as they go in. Tell this is one of the old ones. This is a thin one, which I don't really like to use, but I'm gonna have to. So the last plate, instead of going here, offset one. I'm gonna go right here. Boom. All right, so then from there, we're gonna work backwards for a little bit, and then we have some stuff we have to do. So we got this guy, and then we have this guy. So to make things easier for us when we're putting on that basket, we're going to put a ton of grease on this so that it sits flat inside here and we prevent it drooping down. Doesn't always work, but we're gonna give it a shot. So I'll show you what I mean in 1 second. All right, so we're gonna use some grease here as like a glue almost. Not a glue, but you know what I mean. We'll throw a heavy glob on there. It's okay, it's not gonna hurt the bike. I was taught to this by a guy who is a much better mechanic than me and has built a lot of bikes that you watch on TV. So we're gonna stick that guy in there. So you can see, it'll we'll put more in as we do it later, but it'll help it not drop as quick. And you'll see what I mean later. So for the Suter, you wanna make sure these lines there's 2 plates in here. It can be a little tricky. Grab a little pick or something. Yeah, and then make those bolt holes easily visible. Cool. Throw that on here. Just like that. Now what we have to do, as you can see, the grease is already coming off, but that's all right. We'll throw a big glob on there after. Really don't need it, but it helps. So we gotta take all these little bolts that we had before, and we're gonna take those tiny little washers off. So we're gonna put all of these bolts with no washers back in, except for one. And I got one shown so I can show you what the little washer looks like. They're super thin. I believe this is like a 0.2 or 0.25. So we're gonna leave this one out. We'll take the washer off later, but we're gonna put all of these in, like I said, except for one. And these don't go in very tight. So you're gonna put them in, and they kind of just go, I don't have the torque spec on me right now, but it's pretty much just like hand tight-ish. Well, tighten with a tool, and then just a little twist. Okay, so we need to take a measurement inside this hole with this 10mm bushing, and it'll make sense when I explain the calculations after. This is going to get us our calculations for the lift that we need to have on this plate. So with our 10mm bushing that Suter supplies, we're going to stick that in our caliper, and with the hole that we haven't put anything in, we're going to feed that through and make sure it's all the way at the bottom. And then we're going to push this in. We're not pressing super hard. We're just getting a good consistent measurement. I'm reading 35.2. We'll just pull it out and we'll check it again, just in case we have a different surface or anything like that. That sounds like it's about right though. So here's a good example. I don't know if you can see. If you don't get it in the correct hole, you'll be way off. I know. There we go. .2728.20. Yeah, we'll go with 35.2. So I'll show you why that's important. Okay, so if we come back over to our table here, we got our oiled up instructions. So simply put, we're measuring the lift angle. What that means, lift distance, excuse me. What that means, don't know. I just know I have to do it. So we're gonna explain how to do it. So we're gonna take our regular measurement, which in this case, they're giving an example of 35.5. Ours was 35.2. Then we're gonna subtract the distance of the bushing, this guy, which was 10 millimeters. And that's gonna put us at 25.2. And then we're gonna remove the 24.5 millimeter gap, which is the bolt length. And that's gonna give us our effective gap of what we have right now. So with the 35.2 that we have, minus the 10 puts us at 25.2, minus 24.5, that puts us at 0.7. So if we look on our chart, based on the ramp angle that we have a 35. It's gonna tell us the max lift that we can have is 1.7, which we don't have. And the recommended gap is 1.2 to 1.4. So we are at a 0.7. So what we're gonna have to do is use some of these washers here, which have multiple different thicknesses that come with the clutch, to get us to that gap that we want. So I have a bag of 0.5s that we're gonna use right here. And we're gonna double check, just because sometimes they get mixed up and they get old or squished or not where they're supposed to be. So yep, that's a 0.5. Yeah, a little bit off, but I'll trust Suter versus my Amazon calipers. So these are 0.5s. We're gonna put those on all of the bolts again, put that back in, and that'll put us at exactly 1.2, which is within the specs that we want. Okay, so we're back at the bike now. What we're gonna do is, like I said, we're gonna pull those bolts out and put the 0.5 spacers. I just took a bunch out of the bag and I grabbed 6 of the closest to exactly 0.5 that I can find. And we're gonna put them on those bolts, put them back in, get them torqued down to what they have to be at, and that's it. Then the clutch is done. Then we'll go on to putting the clutch cover on, which is probably arguably the worst part. So give me 1 second while we do that. All right, now time for the fun part. Sometimes this works great, and sometimes I get it first shot, and sometimes I'll be here for an hour. So hopefully today we get it, within the first couple tries, but there's really no guarantee. So what we're gonna do first is clean this off. So get any old gunk or anything else left on here, same thing on the other side. Get that cleaned up. That way you have good, clean mating surface. You don't gotta go crazy, don't start sanding it and all that stuff. Just get all the junk off of it. So, just so we can see, you can see how this has teeth on one side, right? So it's got to sit like that. This has teeth on the inside. So the difficult part is getting it in this hole. So you need to get it in there, and then I'll show you what I do. You got to get a little twisty twist. Easiest thing is to pop this off too. You're going to need it to stick your fingers through. You're also going to want to take this spring off. Well, not off, but make it so it can move. So if you have to, you can pop it underneath there, but we'll see where it goes from where we're at here so far. Okay, so something that someone once taught me, Fuzzy, that helps, I don't do it every time, but it does help, was the grease I was talking about. So what you can do is get some grease in here. Sometimes it's definitely easier if you do it before, but being that I was trying to make this video, it took longer than expected. You get some grease in there. Like I said, sometimes it works for me, sometimes it doesn't, and it'll kind of help hold it up a bit. Clearly right now it's not working that great for me, so I'm not gonna do it. But I'll just show you what works for me. So those little bushing pieces I was talking about earlier, that go in these little holes, these guys, those are going to help keep the gasket on. So put those back in. Then I got a little bit of oil coming out here, that's all right. Grab your new gasket. Try not to bend it when you're opening out of the bag. It's a lot easier. And this only goes one way, so you can look at the holes and whatnot. And if it doesn't line up perfectly, then you're not doing it right, or you have the wrong gasket. So, yes, it goes like this. Bam. And like I said, we use those little guys. It'll help keep the gasket in place. And that's why it's annoying if you reuse one, because they get a little bent and then like it pops off those things you're trying to put it on, or it folds underneath the cover. It's a pain in the ass. So let's give this a whirl and see how it works. So we want to set this up as close to correct as possible from the start. So teeth facing to the left, it's going to droop a little bit. That's okay. Okay, so this cable gets annoying. It's in the way. I'm going to grab this guy, kind of start getting it seated a little bit. And what I try and do, if you're like a short girl, I've seen people, or with small hands, I've seen people use safety wire to hook that clip and use that to jiggle it around. I just have long enough fingers that I can kind of reach it. And you can kind of feel where it has to go and give it a little wiggle. And you can use the teeth on the clutch cover to kind of catch it, and you'll know when you got it. Boom. Perfect, first time. You know when you got it because it'll actually suck itself in. So like right now it's fully seated in. However, we might not have the correct engagement that we want, which is okay. So we're gonna put that clip back where it has to go. Bam. So this worked out great for me. And this is why I like having those markers, because you can see when I have the clutch cable attached, which we'll do in a minute, it should sit right about here, which makes my paint lines match perfectly. I'm surprised that worked so well the first time. When we put it together, hopefully it's exactly how I want it. But yeah, the easiest way to do it is if it's not correct, you can spin this the other direction. So you can kind of get your finger in there, you got to finagle a little bit and you'll feel it, but you can twist this, and once it kind of touches, those two teeth will connect and it'll suck itself in. And if it's not in the right spot, you can just loosen a little bit of tension on it and you can twist this and it'll make it jump the teeth until you have it exactly where you want it. I wish that actually, I'm not going to do it on purpose because it's a bitch, but I wish that was a little bit harder because it would have been a better demonstration. But yeah, that worked out great. So what we're gonna do right now, we'll put some bolts in, just put like 1 or 2 around just to hold it in place, just loose. That way it doesn't pop off when I try putting this clutch cable on and whatnot. And then once I know that it's where I want it, we'll put all the cables back on and we'll be good to go. Okay, I got 1 bolt here and 1 bolt here. Not super torqued down, but enough that this can't move. Don't put them all in yet until the clutch cable's on, because it could be way off and it could be wrong and you gotta take them all out again. It's a pain in the ass. Just put 2 in. That way it stays. Hook the clutch cable up, make sure it has the engagement and everything that you need and what you want. And I'll show you what I mean by that. And then put all your stuff in, because you don't want to do the same thing 1,000 times. I've been there, I've done that, it's a bitch. So we're gonna just work backwards pretty much. So this guy is gonna go through here. We're gonna have to take that safety wire off to make our life a little bit easier. That's all right. Let's see, can we get through it? Yes, all right, so that's gonna sit in this little slot right there. And then this tab is going to hook right back into where we wanted it the first time. So I think what we're going to try doing it is this way, because there is tension on it, which makes it kind of hard. So we'll cut this off, just get this out of the way. And we're going to pull this guy out, and we'll connect this first. That's hooked into there, and then we can give that some tension. Sorry, I'm moving the camera here. Get on the other side. There we go. So check that real quick. Does everything move the way it's supposed to? Does it feel like it has tension? It feels just like it did before with the clutch lever, which is great. So I'm gonna call that good. We're gonna throw the bolts back on, cover everything up, make sure everything's closed, and then we'll start it, and we'll make sure the clutch actuates the way it's supposed to, that the wheel spins and it doesn't spin, and blah, 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 what you're supposed to do with the clutch. That's really it, guys. I hope that helps at least a little bit for some people. I know most people that if you have a Suter clutch, you probably have a little bit of knowledge on what you're doing with mechanics, because it's not really a new rider clutch. I guess there's more people that have a bit of experience that usually have it. But I hope that helps a little bit. I kind of wish the clutch cover didn't work perfectly. It doesn't usually go like that, but this time it did. But yeah, don't be afraid to work on your bike. I really want to start making more videos. I'm not a mechanic, and I want to make some videos that of just the things that I've learned and how to do things over the years. And I pretty much do almost everything by myself, minus things that break that are at my league, in which case then I call Fuzzy and cry to him. But yeah, I want to encourage people to work on things on their own. There's a lot of people I see like paying to get their brake pads changed and stuff, and that's so stupid. Like a basic tool set and just a little bit of know-how, and it's not hard to do on your own. So if there's anything that you want to see that you think is basic stuff you can tackle, just drop a comment or a link or something, send me a message, let me know, and I'll see if I can make a video for you. Hope it helps, guys. Thanks.